Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing some Bible journaling with Clair stamps in Psalm 51, and I'll be using the brand new Washed by the Blood stamp set. There's a closer look at that stamp set. It is from Clair Stamps, like I said, and it is from the Color by Faith series. Now, before I even start stamping, I like to lay out my stamps on my Bible so I have a good idea of where I'm going to be stamping. Also, this is a new tip that I got from a lady on the Clair design team. Her name is Carrie, and she suggested that behind your Bible journaling pages, put down some sheet protectors. I got mine from the dollar store. They were $1 for a pack of 20, I believe. These are a little bit thinner, so I'm not going to be using them for anything other than kind of using them as backing papers when ink might run off the edges. But this way, all you need to do is wipe them off and you can reuse them time and time again. So you get a lot of use out of these. So to start off with, I'm going to start on the right hand side. This is going to be a larger 2-page spread, and I am starting off with the shower head image from that stamp set. Now this has actual like little water droplets coming out of that. I'm going to draw mine in by hand, and I didn't want to take the chance of my pen being a different size and it looks a little off when I go to draw some in later on. So I just masked them all off with some painter's tape, inked up my stamp, tore that painter's tape off so I have no ink on those little droplets, and then I'll just stamp them on the right hand side of my page right at the very top, and I'm kind of cutting off that curved portion as well. This is going to look like one of those shower spouts that hangs straight down and kind of has the rain or the water falling out of it like rain. Now my next stamp, I'm actually going to stamp my little verse on the right hand side. This is the smaller one. It says, "Renew my spirit," and this is from Psalm 51:10. Now this actual verse is on the right side of my page, and the verse I'll be stamping later on the left side, on the page on the left hand side, that verse is actually on that side. That's why I did a complete 2-page spread here. I wanted them both to be a little bit different, but also go together. Now on the left hand side, on the left hand page, I will be stamping the bathtub. Now you'll see here that this is going to hang off the left hand side a little bit. I don't like to cover up my words. That's just my personal opinion, and when I'm doing my Bible journaling or my personal taste. So I moved it over a little bit to the left, which cuts off a little bit of that stamp, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and carry that over on my right hand page, that kind of aesthetic as well. This is where that sheet protector comes in nice though. I just wiped off that ink and I can continue to reuse that. Now for my verse, this is the larger one. It says, "Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sins." This is from Psalms 51:2, and that verse is on the left-hand page, so everything is kind of going to go together in this very large spread. Whenever I ink up my stamps, I am inking them up with some black dyeing that is waterproof. I will be watercoloring, so if you're going to watercolor, use any ink that works for you in your particular Bible and also is waterproof. A good one that I like to use too is VersaFine. Just remember that's a pigment ink. It needs a little bit of dry time, especially if you've got a slickness to your Bible pages. So maybe take a heat gun to it, or you could always heat emboss with some Clair embossing powder. Now included in this set are these little bubbles. I'm going to add a few of those right over the bathtub to kind of fill in that white space and give it a little bit more interest. There, I just stamped 2 of those very quickly, and now I'm going to do some hand doodling. Kind of hand doodling. I'm going to trace a heart essentially. Now this is from a die cut that I have. I just had an extra one laying in my little cup that I like to keep of extra die cuts. If you do not have a heart die cut, you can draw one by hand. You can cut one out and then trace it like I'm doing here. You can also, if you aren't comfortable with doing either one of those, print one off from the internet and just cut it out and trace around it. You don't need a die cut to do this. I'm using my micron pen to trace it, which is waterproof, and I picked one with a tip that kind of matched the lines that are in this stamp set. So it's going to all be cohesive. Now on this heart, straight across the middle, I'm going to draw a wavy line. this is going to look like something is being showered off of it. I am just freehanding this. If you're not comfortable with that, you can always make yourself a little stencil just by cutting it out and then tracing that. I just went ahead and did some freehand drawing. Right above that, I'm going to draw a few little squiggly circles, rectangles, whatever you want to call them, just to add more interest so it looks like everything isn't completely washed off. It gives it a little bit more of a realistic look, if you will. I just drew mine on the top, but if I would have been thinking, I probably would have drawn a few on the bottom side of that line as well and colored them in with the opposite color of what I'm coloring in the top ones. But I didn't do that, and then I moved on to some more hand doodling, which was just adding those water droplets coming from that shower head. And you can stamp these if you want to. I just didn't want to take the chance that they were going to look off from the ones I stamped, so I just completely masked it off and filled in all of those with my micron pen. I believe I am using a 0.03 tip on my micron pen. Just make sure you are using a waterproof ink. So for my watercoloring, I am starting off with some antique linen distress ink. If you do not want to use distress inks and run the risk of bleed through, use an ivory color, or you could even use a very light gray or very watered down brown color. So I went ahead and colored in that bathtub with that. And then for the bubbles, I'm going to be using some Salty Ocean. Now I just dot this into the bubbles on the top and then above the bathtub as well. I like to pick up color from different places on my palette and dot it into the bubbles. That way you get a nice variety of color and it's not all the same wash of blue. It gives it a little bit more interest. Also on those larger bubbles, I like to go a little bit darker right around the outside of those where the accent marks are on the stamps, and that gives them a more round appearance. With my blue all done, I went ahead and wiped that off my palette, and then I'm going to be moving on to some Hickory Smoke, which is a gray ink. Now I watered this down a little bit and I put it on the little feet of the tub and also on the shower head on the right hand page. While it was on my palette, I just moved over and kind of planned that out so I could transition from one page to the next. Now for my heart, this is the largest piece that I'm going to be watercoloring, and whenever you're watercoloring on larger pieces in your Bible journal, you need to move a little bit quicker. That way it doesn't have time to settle into the page and create those really harsh lines. For my red, I am using Festive Berries. Like I said before, it's just a red watercolor that I'm making here, and I'm going to put it along the top of that line that I created, but I'm leaving it out of those little bubbles or circles that I made too. Those I'm going to color in with some brown that I'll be watercoloring with on the bottom of the heart, and that's just going to make it look like not everything is washed off completely. I'm quickly coloring this in, and then I'll move on brown watercolor, which is Vintage Photo. Now, I had a little bit of trouble with my Vintage Photo wanting to separate on my Bible journaling pages. I don't know if it's just my Bible. Maybe it happens to you too. I'm not really sure what the issue was here. I just kind of went over it, and it wasn't in all the places, just a few of them, but it almost wanted to separate out into different colors, which was strange. It's never done that to me before. So I went around on the bottom, watercolored in the bottom of that heart, and also those little dots as well. If you wanted to make this a little bit easier on yourself, you could heat emboss this with clear embossing powder over VersaFine ink, and then that would make little wells and your colors won't bleed quite as easily if you want to go in while everything's still wet. I added in a few final touches on this watercoloring. I used some Hickory Smoke, which I used beforehand to color in the shower head and the claw or the feet on the tub. I used a little bit of that watered down and put shadows underneath that heart and also underneath the tub as well. Start darker on the top and then kind of drag the color down and make it lighter as I go down the page with my shadows. And then for the water that's coming out of that shower head, I used a few different colors. I used Salty Ocean, Mermaid Lagoon, and then I pulled out one of my watercolor markers to get a navy watercolor, and I added just stripes of that here and there, nothing major, but especially on the outside to kind of give definition to that water spout. I brought my heat tool to my Bible journaling pages to dry them very quickly. You could let them air dry, but I went ahead and used my heat tool. There you can see that bleed through. This is more than I have ever gotten from any other watercolor I've used. So I won't be using them again in my Bible journaling, but I wanted to keep this in there just to show you what they can do. Learn from my mistake. If it bothers you, don't use these. Now, a little trick that I learned here, I used my heat gun to dry that, and while it's still hot, I put in a piece of white computer paper. I shut the hot pages on that and press down. This is going to give them kind of an ironing effect. I don't have a small iron in my craft room. I really need to get one to use in cases like this, but I just press it down, give it a little press. This was just a few seconds, and it kind of straightens out the warping that you get. If you leave that in there overnight and let it sit with a few heavy books on top of it, it will completely take out any crinkling or warping you get from your watercolor. But once all that was done, that completed my Bible journaling pages for today. Here are a few final pictures. Because this is a 2-page spread, I kept both pages relatively simple. But whenever you open it up and you look at both pages, they both coordinate well. And I love, love, love the way these turn out. Now, that does it for me today. On the left side of your screen, you're going to see a few different links you can click on. I want to thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting.